Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel. I am Juliana Lopes on behalf of CEBDS, the Brazilian company panel for sustainable development. I am the host for this online event. We're going to discuss Brazil's critical role towards a carbon neutral economy for nature and people. We have a window of opportunities that is exclusive for Brazil to counter the multiple issues we face regarding climate emergency, biodiversity loss, pollution, and also inequality. Brazil plays a critical role. Global decarbonization requires a yearly investment estimated to $3 to $5 trillion by 2030. And Brazil has the potential to attract nearly $3 million in investments by 2050. And we can become a power in this inclusive green economy. And Brazil's greatest asset is its profile of emissions, mostly related to deforestation and land use changes, which do pose a challenge, but an opportunity as well. Given that the reduced emissions is incredibly lower in cost when compared to other countries. 95% of the reduced emissions can be done by lower than $20 per carbon ton. So this deforestation challenge is pretty concentrated. An estimated 80% is in the Amazon alone. So we're going to get the opportunity to dig deeper on this debate regarding how to unlock this potential, to bring also more figures to foster our conversation. There's this study of scenarios for decarbonization and a scenario of ambitious action by different sectors of the economy. When it comes to decarbonization, this would require annual investments in the order of 80 billions, adding $15 billion to the GDP when creating 1.1 million jobs. So we do have a great opportunity to leverage a development model, also economic resumption and sustainable panel. We're pretty representative, and we invite all of you to join the debate. We're going to open a dialogue round with initial presentations by our panelists, and then we'll be able to open for Q&A that can be sent via the chat. So please do prepare your questions. We are welcoming your participation. To begin with, I'd like to introduce our speakers. I'd like to welcome Gustavo Fontanelli, General Coordinator for Decarbonization with the Brazilian Ministry of Development, Industry and Commerce. Also, Alessandra Fajardo, Director of Partnerships in the Value Chain for Strategy and Sustainability with Bayer. And also, Gabriel Santamaria, who's the Head of Sustainability with Banco do Brasil. Welcome. To start our debate, I would like to invite Gustavo Fontanelli to discuss how Brazil's company sector can leverage this opportunity with equity. Gustavo, over to you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you for the opportunity on behalf of Secretary Rodrigo Nuremberg, Secretary of Green and Guard Economy in the Ministry of Industry. For us, we are highly satisfied to join this event today, given its relevance and importance. First of all, I would like to thank my dear friend Mariana Gross and WBCST for the leadership in sustainability in our country, and for participating what I consider to be a great path, because sustainability, as I usually say and everyone knows, cannot be done alone. And that is why President Lula, on the World Day of Environment this year, in 2023, has reconstituted the Low Carbon Committee. And CEBDS is a native member since its beginning, when it was an industry plan, and has become the technical committee. It is also important to see you again here. And I want to say how happy I am to see you and all of our great speakers this morning. It is important to remember and to be sorry for how delayed Brazil is in this agenda, how the world is delayed in this agenda. Although 9 years ago through CBDS, you delivered a wonderful presentation to our industry on internal pricing for carbon and shadow pricing for carbon. We were there 9 years ago, and maybe few relevant issues to that still in Brazil and the world. And now we can see in this ecological transition context from the initiative led by the Ministry of Treasury. But it is a systemic initiative that congregates everything we need to treat relevantly on environment, climate, sustainability, and especially competitiveness. That is why the ecological transition is a pity, because it is too delayed. It is not the Montreal Protocol. No one talks about the ozone layer, but now we need to challenge climate. I mean, we need to tackle the climate challenges. This is pretty sad. So I'd like to recall on civil society, academia, with the government to build possible ways, to suggest possibilities for the National Council of Industrial Development. Then they are responsible for enacting the industrial policy, and it recently established climate governance in Brazil, the technical committee, or I should say, the interministerial committee for climate change. So all of the climate decisions are made by society. So today we do have to celebrate the initiative by Ministry of the Treasury. We acknowledge that it is delayed, but what really matters is the collective capacity of ours as society to organize a technical committee to feed and help the ecological transition. The CNDI, as I said, when it comes to industrial policies, the climate governance as well, to tackle the topics that really matter. In my understanding, names are not really important. Results do matter to our society. Therefore, we need to tackle bioeconomy, regulated carbon market, energy transition, energy efficiency, how delayed we are when it comes to that topic in Brazil. And please do count on us on the committee or the leadership of our Secretary Nordenberg. Let's work together, because we are a collective here. The nature-based solutions, as you know pretty well, and you know how important this is to guide us. Also, infrastructure is important. I'd like to make 2 quotes here. That's the advantage of not being live. We can cheat from our tablet here. I'd like to quote Copernicus, because he was aware of things, maybe the man of the stars. nature wisdom is such that it doesn't produce anything useless. And I like to quote Victor Hugo. It is sad to think that nature speaks and that humans do not hear. This is not a negative message. Au contraire, it is a reflection message, but it is a call for action, actually, because we do not handle a government agenda, but a state agenda. That's why we're here this morning, all of us together. Thank you very much for having me. Please do rely on us. Please do help us on the low carbon technical committee. We created 4 working groups that are key for the climate change discussions. Firstly, AWG on regulated carbon market. Secondly, on decarbonization and industry energy transition. Thirdly, AWG on social bioeconomy. And number 4, AWG on organizational inventories. You saw the result back there. Thank you. And we want to help and build here together. Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. Well, we are starting on a high note here with a very important call to action. And I want to thank you for bringing the nature-based solutions issue, which was a topic for another discussion we had this week, and it plays a key role because Brazil has a number of advantages. We concentrate 15% of the natural carbon sequester naturally, but it is not limited to this area. As you well remembered, Gustavo, we have a whole potential of social bioeconomy. And what country other than Brazil to lead this agenda, considering all the actives as an incredibly biodiverse country? So we have many good elements to start our debate here. I would also like to take the opportunity and invite Alessandra to join us. I think Gustavo has brought this landscape of geopolitics. It is important to say that we are delayed. And what we see now is a sense of higher urgency. So we do need to speed the implementation route in terms of robust commitments and this transversality of policies from the government. And as we see right now, the centrality of the agenda, the climate and bioeconomy, sustainability agenda as a whole is an important leverage for us to position ourselves in the new political scenario globally, where sustainability with equity is more and more clear that it is a competitiveness factor. And we're bringing the Ecological Transformation Plan as one of the topic of the sections for the policies, that integration policies, but there are others as well. So I want to bring this geopolitical aspect because, in my opinion, we don't see these framework of factors for a few decades now. Brazil is again on the spotlight, and this goes beyond sustainability. With an energy crisis, we have the opportunity to change productive practices and agricultural practices regarding a lower dependency on fossil fuels. Having said that, I'd like to invite Alessandra to comment, particularly on the contributions from agribusiness to speed this transition. Alessandra, welcome. Over to you. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to start by saying that I think the package brings it benefits agribusiness and agriculture. I always like to mention the 3 F's: food, forest, and finance. So my colleague from Banco do Brasil will be speaking about finance, but if we don't have any financing for this transition from sustainable agriculture and finance agricultural practices that is regenerative, either from conservation or whatever you call it, it isn't going to be eternal. You're going to use it just once, but then the farmer will forget about it. We do need to produce more within the same space to keep the standing forest and have this degree, this incentive as well for a farmer. I also think that it is important to mention that the plan doesn't forget family farming. We see credit initiatives and technical assistance because we want to say that this group wants to improve when it comes to productivity and sustainability within this group of farmers. The other F, as I said, is preservation of biodiversity. As you said yourself, the idea of providing ecosystemic services, establishing payment for environmental services allows us to award the good ones. I like to mention this because I am an agronomic engineer. I'm always close to farmers, but what we do see today within the US, the average electric growth, the electric crop is 30%. Anything from 30 to 50% is a gain. In Brazil, we have 80%. So we know our farmer on average is better. And how can we bring tools and benefits to award the good ones as well? Because the good ones have been using 30, 40, 50 years of good actions. So how can we bring this here? That's one of the struggles that many countries go through when it comes to carbon agriculture. In Brazil, it's so hard to do that. When it comes to carbon, that's one of the points that deal with the program. That's the low carbon agriculture, reduced carbon emissions in agriculture. This is not beneficial not only for the country or society as a whole, but agribusiness as well, because those who adopt the low carbon agricultural practices, either through direct planting or plantation turn or coverage, there are plenty of them, what have you, they can benefit from this mechanism. At Bayer, we've been fostering our phosphorus through the New Carbon Program, and results have been extremely promising. Super positive results. And one of the results that we can calculate, it's still complex, but the results are great. And they prove that if you do use regenerative practices and low carbon practices sustainably, you can tackle the issue. We know agriculture is responsible for nearly 25% of emissions in Brazil, as Juliana said, but it can also be a great ally when it comes to reduction. We can capture carbon from the atmosphere and fix it on the soil. Anyways, this imposes the challenge of finding the best decarbonization strategies for the group with a regulatory format, a format that can be adapted to that particularity. We are on the right track. We have all it takes to be quite successful with the plan, with all of this framework. But again, each industry has its own particularity, and we should tackle that so we can be as effective as possible and as transparent as possible. That's one of the things that Brazil can show this even more. Thank you. Thank you, Ale. You mentioned a few great leverages for us to discuss with Gabriel. One of the challenges in this transition is to mobilize resources in scale and speed necessary for the sector transformation. And this is broad transformation that comes to the business model and value chains. So I'd like to invite you, Gabriel, to comment on the role of financial solutions in this transition to a green and inclusive economy. Great, Juliana. Thank you for having me. We are very happy to be here representing Banco do Brasil and talk about our experiences and what I've been developing to support the transition plan ecologically. I do have a few quick slides, but they are worth sharing just to make it easier to understand. I think you can see the full screen. Please let me know. Let me try again. There you are. One more time, thank you for having me. Thank you, Gustavo, Juliana, Alessandra. It's great to be with all of you here. This is a little bit of the historical timeline for Banco do Brasil. This is not a new topic for us. Sustainability is part of our strategy. This allows us to incorporate environmental, social, and governance issues represented by ESG in our practices and businesses. And that's what I'd like to bring attention to this slide for. As you can see, as we near 2020, we focus value generation. So we want to generate economical result and bring a positive social impact. And the big role of financial system, as said by Juliana, is our capacity to allocate capital for the positive growth. So as said, moving on to the next slide, as you can see, Brazil's credit portfolio has nearly 1 trillion reais, and 1/3 of this wallet directs sustainable economy, the low carbon economy program, renewable energy alliance. We have solutions that are developed for all audiences, either public, big companies, agribusiness, or individuals. This is connected directly to the plan. And one of the biggest challenges we have, and yesterday, actually a few hours ago, I arrived from New York. We were on the pre-climate week, on the climate week itself, we were negotiating with banks. So we want to capture this more cheaply so we can pass this on. We have an important role when it comes to developing a clear strategy to boost these sectors in the bank. When we measure 320 billion, we are committed to 2030 to reach 500 billion portfolio of balance for sustainable financing. We want to reach $100 billion in capture or emission of collaterals that are categorized as ESG. So in the US, we had a partnership. We signed an understanding with the Brazilian the Inter-American Development Bank when it comes to renewable economy, and we were going to do this on a more proper manner when we get the questions. Well, I think I went through this slide. So the bank had a pipeline of nearly 23 billion in 2022 and 23. the biggest highlight is an emission we had in April this year. We captured $750 million in the international market, and this fund targeted the financing of renewable energy products, but also small and medium companies that are led by women. So we get a more competitive price to boost the sectors we believe can bring big impacts and leverage all the opportunities that were presented. More recently, though, although it's not here on the big number, the preparations I have just mentioned. So we're talking businesses that are more traditional for a bank. So credit, collateral emission, but there are other opportunities for us as financial sector. One of them is the carbon market itself. Banco do Brasil, with our network of partners, does offer solutions to generate these projects, also targeting the voluntary market. And what is interesting in this modeling is clients that have an area, a large area that suffered deforestation, need to reforest those areas or finance big bio-managing projects or renewable energy. So we can support the whole process, both of intelligence and investment to generate the carbon credit projects. Likewise, we've been trying to boost this decarbonization agenda with companies, both with financing for reduced emission of greenhouse gases, but also when it comes to generated credits, so companies can offset their operations, and also helping them elaborate this inventory of greenhouse gases. Another point I'd like to bring up as a highlight recently to boost this market, Banco do Brasil for the first time established an auction, and we sold property and accepted carbon credit as payment. As you can see on the blue box, it is a pioneer activity to foster and promote this market. Moving on to the next slide, this is a bit of our pipeline. I'm not going to go through the nitty-gritty. Some projects have been completed, others are still ongoing, but analyzing the 10 projects, we have nearly 2 million carbon credits generated every year. So the figures are generated in 30 years on average, and this number connects to our commitment for a more sustainable future when it comes to preserve more than 500,000 hectares of native forest. Of course, we can avoid deforestation and increase preservation. And why does Banco do Brasil, what is the financial system? Why can we help those solutions? Especially because we have a large amount of information from our client and a lot of embedded technology. Based on that, we can identify the areas where we have forest on the legal reserve, and eventually those clients today do not use these areas for cropping or livestock, and we can offer a profitable solution while conserving the native forest. Besides the relationship and capillarity and trust that exists from Banco do Brasil and the very relationship with farmers. Alessandra mentioned sustainable and regenerative agriculture a while back. It's a pretty strong agenda for us in Banco do Brasil. I'm going to comment on this on my last slide. We move on to Q&A. I understand that's the wealthier part. I'm going to share this slide deck with you later. And I said this is an actual part of our strategy. This is derived from figures that measure our performance and that each employee has to follow from the president to the newest employees. This is clearly a contribution for the future.
So we have defined goals until 2030, aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Transition Plan for Ecology. In 4 fronts, we define these big goals. Sustainable goal, we want to reach a portfolio of 500 billion until 2030. In renewable energy, we are the main funder and we want to reach 30 billion until 2030. Today is more than 13 already. They bring this positive externality that are 2 million tons of greenhouse gases that are avoided. Sustainable agriculture, we talked a lot about that. 50% of our portfolio of credit to agribusiness is sustainable. So we're looking at family agriculture, low carbon agriculture, and other lines, and supporting state and municipalities as well. A strong, responsible investment front is this week we've been in New York for the Climate Week, talking to investors and trying to position the bank, and also talking a lot about the Amazon being well connected to these great objectives that we have. An internal view, our homework, as we say, the ESG and climate agenda, and looking for our emissions, diversity, and digital transformation as well. And a very important theme, I think it's well connected to what we've been working with, is when we talk about our impact in the value chain. So our last commitment, you can see in the bottom right part of the slide, we have this commitment of preserving and conserving 1 million hectares of forests until 2025, as well as promoting several efforts to recover degraded areas and also pastures. Just to add to the way I see this role of the financial sector and how the bank has been working with this agenda. Thank you. Thank you, Gabriel. Sustainable finance is one of the 6 axes of the ecological transformation plan. And using this material that we have for the debate, I bring this contextualization. As CBDS, we started this dialogue through the finance ministry and other ministries involved as well in the execution of this plan for ecological transformation. And I highlight here this MGIC, which we have this long-term agenda alongside. And this plan brings around 100 measures being forecast to transform the comparative advantages of Brazil in competitive advantages and distributive as well. So these 3 pillars, objective gains, and once these measures are enforced, they foster these gains for sustainability and equity as well. The reason I'm talking about this is because there is a transversality in sustainable finance, are enabling elements for this view of our country to be possible. So as the CBDS, we've had some dialogues with the finance ministry and also contribution from our associate companies, and they were summarized in this document as this ecological transformation plan, and was delivered to Fernando Haddad, the minister, in July this year. And you can see these recommendations, they are available at the CEBDS website. This is the beginning of this journey. These measures, forecasts in the plan will be executed throughout the administration and beyond. And in fact, we hope to have this plan and clear strategy to accelerate this transition of Brazil towards an inclusive and green economy. With these elements that we brought to the debate, I would also like to reinforce the invitation for you to participate with questions. We will open now the debate. This is our second round with questions and answers. I will kickstart it, inviting back to the floor Gustavo Fontanelli to talk about the potential benefits in economical terms, in medium and long term, of the implementation of these legal and infra-legal measures, especially about decarbonization and economy, as you said in the beginning. Gustavo, please tell us more about what is expected. Thank you, Juliana. How much time do I have? Please, if you can. Can you hear me? If you could answer in up to 2 minutes, so we have more chance for interaction. This is the most important part of the event, in my opinion, where the floor is clear and I can talk about anything. First, I'd like to highlight the importance of Alessandra and Gabriel's speeches. Alessandra brings me back to a very nice time when we were discussing the genesis of the ABC program that turned out to be everything that we're talking about, with buyers' support, and also Gabriel talking about climate finances. We need to be together. This is the main problem with the Montreal Protocol and the ozone layer. We need to make viable, and something that Juliana talked about, equity with a just transition. So we need the money to do that. About the questions, the economical potential benefits, this is very important. Actually, I'm a federal employee for the industry ministry, and the plan has been presented by the finance ministry. For us in the government and for society in general, these models have not been presented in detail that the finance ministry has been working on. From our part, as we had the responsibility over the moderated carbon market, we see now with the dimension and the impact that it has. So what we really need to understand is the real impact of this plan in our society, because the plan is well constructed, they have the relevant access, but we feel the need for the inclusion, social inclusion and equity, and we are available to contribute always, and you can count on us. Thank you, Gustavo. From the business sector, we can contribute a lot with the commitments and the acceleration of these implementation routes. We have a question from the audience here. I'd like to take the chance to direct it to Alessandra, which is a bit related to what Gustavo was talking about, which is, what are the main bottlenecks today to advance this agenda for regenerative agriculture and low carbon agriculture? And also, I'd like you to comment some of the key measures that for this adoption of the sustainable agricultural practices in large scale to be adopted. I'd like to start with digital agriculture. It must be much more extensive. You need to reach more the producers, and I need to apply digital agriculture when, where, and how I need it. So we go to another model of agriculture, which is more connected to regeneratives. So fertilizers, biochemicals, the need and the tool. So we need, obviously, to have more extension. We have this program with 2,000 agricultures where we have practices, the conservational practices, direct planting, 80%. But can I improve that? Yes, I can. I have a coverage culture that could be applied. There's a lot to improve still, even though we have reached a good level, we have much to improve. I can do more at the same place. The soil health, how do I change the biodiversity, rotating cultures, bringing benefits? What I like about regenerative agriculture is about it being regenerative and to leave something behind. We have this balance of producing more and conserving at the same time. When we reach this balance, this is the ideal and what we expect to do. So we can produce more to feed population and all these goals that we have for the population development. And at the same time, keeping in the same space what we have, not to have the need to open new areas and have new impacts. I think the role of financing is important. And as the ABC plan is about, we also base a lot on the ABC plan with the projects we have. And I think we lack in terms of methodology, the tropicalization of the methodologies there are today. Many of the existing methodologies are crafted for the Northern Hemisphere, and we have a need for the tropicalization of them. We're working with 3 Embrapas and 14 universities in Brazil to be able to tropicalize and to understand and bring this calculator to the table that is able to calculate in our reality carbon on soil and taking into consideration things we have here and we don't have in other parts of the world. So this is an investment from Bayer and others, and alongside public agencies and public universities and Embrapa to have this benefit for everyone. I think we still lack technology, production technology, seeds or digital. There is funding lacking still and a deeper look in terms of tropicalizing the tools that we need so we can eliminate the bottlenecks and have much larger expansion. Thank you for also bringing the concept of regeneration, because it's important to remind that, and scientists have warned us that with the urgency and worsening of these simultaneous crises and the climate and loss of biodiversity, which it's not enough to just reduce the impact, but to regenerate in each day that passes. Carbon sequestration is key for us to reach this climate sustainability, and reversing loss of biodiversity is still even more urgent. And also with this drive that Ale gave us, I'd like to invite Gabriel to comment on the financial institutions' role, and also the element, Gabriel, about yesterday, government launched for public consultation the action plan for sustainable taxonomy. So we have important enabler mechanism that already happens not only in developed countries, but other countries around here as well. Mexico, Colombia, this is an important element so we can have rules and classifications of what is the green inclusive economy and how to foster these activities through this financial and economical instruments. If you can talk about the role that you see for yourselves as financial institutions in this context. Thank you for the question, Juliana. I usually talk to my team about this, but this is a great understanding that we have today. We have special recognitions with several rankings and indexes as one of the most sustainable banks in the world, I think, through our relationship with sustainable economies. Our mission, our role is to support our clients to be the society in this transition into a more inclusive and green economy. So in the end, what we're saying is, how do I develop the best financial solutions and instruments to make possible for this to happen? From cheaper funding so I can pass this on to my final client with taxes and deadlines that are more lenient. When we look at electric and hybrid vehicles financing, we have different tax rates and interest rates than the other vehicles we have. Also funding for states and municipalities, we have different deadlines for other projects that don't have these aspects in them. Another issue that is key for us to be able to foster this agenda is for us to establish good partnerships. This relationship network that was commented by Gustavo, actually this collaboration network between private sector, government, and all types of partners with the same understanding, this leverages this type of agenda. So this is also a key factor for us. And we also think about education. Many of our clients don't exactly know what to do. So there is a part here of me doing this education part with my sales force so we can focus on ESG for micro and small businesses as well, the same way. We've, we've have we have been doing some road shows and for training. 11,000 family agricultures have been through some time of training with us. We've been developing this decarbonization programs for micro and small businesses. This is under construction, but we have a baseline and have this inventory of emissions, and we have financing for energy efficiency and renewable energy and other fronts. And we hope to, in the end, have a new measurement, and depending on the pool of operations we have this great project of carbon credit generation as well. We can't do this alone. We've been talking with partners, and these are some of the solutions that can contribute so we can really make this transition. Perfect. Thank you, Gabriel. Gustavo, I invite you back to the debate about a point that in some spheres we are late. To give an example, with this measure packet for the transition, some countries have announced, as USA, the European Union, USA with the Reduction Inflation Act that took 12 years to be prepared. We need to rush to be a competitive player in this debate. But I'd like to understand which areas you think there are ripe fruit already that can be prioritized so we can have these gains in competitiveness and accelerate this route for the ecological transformation around MG. How are you guys working? Are there priority areas to have comparative advantages into competitive advantages? Thank you very much for the question. This is key. We were programmed to talk about emission reduction goals, but this is not exactly in the plan for ecological transition. This is in the climate plan for the environmental ministry. These are the goals that will define the costs for Brazilian society. About the ripe fruit, this is interesting. We have several. Just open the window and look. Brazil is a huge environmental potence. And you can see what Bahia does in Brazil, what this extraordinary agenda by Banco do Brasil, and see everything Brazil does that is not from 10 or 12 or 30 years, it's for 50 years. It is Embrapa, it is Brazil. And what does it mean? Well, look at ethanol, for example. What we have done with ethanol, what it represents for Brazil, and what it represents in potentiality in bioindustry for the world. Brazil is a biopotency. So when we lose opportunities or when we spend energy with some solutions, we lose electric cars. Electric cars are a good solution for maybe for the ones who don't have other options. Maybe here too, but the focus is not electric cars. We are focused on nature-based solutions in forests. Take a look at what incredible companies are doing here. We have Bayer, but there are several other companies that could be quoted here as well. Look at the leaderships at CBDS. What we need to is to give the proper value for what we have. And we need to really understand that we have this value, and we need to value ourselves, and this is the way to the future. And then the giant will take steps. We have a lot to show, a lot to give as society and as a group. This is what we're working for with this collective effort. Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. In this context of the Ecological Transformation Plan and other key policies that have already been mentioned here with the ABC plan in the past and now the Safra plan, Inova Agro. Ale, how do you see the role of the agribusinesses to deliver these reductions in emissions and also to publicize sustainable practices in the agricultural sector? When we think about the whole chain, the whole value chain for the food, we have several companies with goals for reduction. At Bayer, we have our scope 1 and 2 and 3 goals, and the agriculture division has a goal for 2030, which is to reduce 30% of greenhouse gases emissions in countries and cultures that we work at, and to improve the lives of 100 million small agricultures. When we talk about regenerative agriculture, the social pillar is there. We have people there. So we adapt, we set goals for this. As a group, we have goals as being carbon neutral, net zero, and then raising emissions until 2050. We have goals as an industry. Many companies have goals that bring several actions to this. So we need the agriculture, which is the entrance for the food in this value chain, to also work with this. Otherwise, the chain is not complete. The supply for the company, in the case of a food company, is the resulting of crops from agriculture. So these projects and practices, it's the pro carbon that we have, for example, we have 70 consultants for the agriculture to choose from. It doesn't talk about buyer products, it talks about good practices. We have to change the mindset and look at the benefit and always connect it to productivity. Because if the agriculture doesn't see productivity, the transformation will not happen. If we say it will conserve, but it reduce in half, they will want to plant in more areas to keep the productivity. These solutions are always based in science, This is why we have all these people working with us, but also it's important to bring alongside sustainability the productivity for the producer, because the transformation is real, it is long term. If we do one program here and one there, it's going to be hard. I think Gabriel was the one who talked about partnerships, and we believe a lot in this. Alone, a company would not be able to do that, or the government or civil society. It's going to be hard. So we have to join strengths so we can work in partnerships, in projects, for us to leverage in this space. If Gustavo said it's a little late, on how can we regain this time that has been lost to shorten this space that we have. So I believe a lot in partnerships, and everything is based in science, in this transformation to be from companies and also in the field. Key ingredients to be based in science and partnerships is the way for us to be able to scale this change. And to close up, I'd like to invite Gabriel for the final speech. Are the financial instruments that we have enough for us to accelerate this transition, or do we need innovations and creation of new financial instruments to mobilize this capital in a scale necessary to foster the ecological transformation? Thank you, Juliana. All of our panel, we talked about the opportunities, great numbers, and studies point out that we need 4 trillion in investments for green structure in the next years. There's a great need for us to really reach and use all the opportunities. This is a combination of financial regulations, tax instruments. There's a joint effort. And because of that, this network work, each one in their own role. I have a very optimistic view. The country has been leading this agenda with the federal government involved, and in G with Gustavo having this great role vocalizing internally and internationally these measures that have been adopted and concrete measures. So we have to lead this agenda. This is a singular moment for the country, and we can, with technology and innovation, this will happen. We will be able to deliver good results for the country. And at the same time, I'd like to recognize Bayer, Alessandra. It's very good for us to see companies with such solid practices and have this view of future, and with the KPIs, especially with the clarity incorporated to the strategy. And this type of partnership is what we're looking for responsible companies with work that is similar to ours. Also, CEBDS, I'd like to thank a lot. We've been long-term partners in trying to build all these agendas that really transform the country and the world for it to be more and more sustainable. And looking at our transition plan and noting that Banco do Brasil is continuing the efforts, and our sustainable vice president, Ciceron, I say hi. Thank you for the opportunity, and see you next time. Gabriel, Alessandra, Gustavo, thank you very much. This discussion is sure not ended here. So we hope to have launched some seeds that are so important as the questions and answers that we've been given. to see the paths, and I'd like to thank all the participation. And as a final message and call to action, I'd like to say that we have a window of opportunity that is unique. Brazil is in the lead of important international debates as the G20 and COP30. We believe it's going to be in Belém. This is the opportunity for us to lead international negotiations through example. And the company sector, the cutting edge represented by CEBDS, has an important role of offering solutions that are sustainable and impactful. And this is what we've been working with to accelerate this implementation route for us to be able to deliver these transformations in a carbon neutral economy, positive for nature and for people, at the speed and scale that are needed. I hope this debate has contributed with some material and inspiration for us to accelerate this transition. I thank you much and wish you a great day and a great weekend. Thank you all the panelists and the audience that has been with us today. See you later. Thank you.